Okay, so today's video is brought on by me just wanting to do it. So very rarely do I ever actually get in a mood to make content, so we may as well take this to the fullest extent that we can. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to service the Mark 6, and I'm going to swap the engines. So this currently has a supercharged engine in it. I actually want to put the stock engine in it, just because I want to shoot it with a stock engine and see if I like it. It's been a long time since I've actually shot a stock Marq, so I just kind of want to shoot one. So we're going to go over some of the tools we're going to need, and then we're going to basically get into this. So this video is going to be unapologetically long, so if you don't like long videos, this one's not for you. But let's go ahead and get into this. Alright, so some of the tools we're going to need. Obviously, anytime you're working on markers of any form, O-ring picks are going to make life just that much easier. I usually keep kind of a variety. I keep a straight pick, mainly for kind of setting O-rings that are like down inside of regulator bodies, things like that. I keep just a couple different shapes. Curved picks are really good for getting like inside of like cans. And the same thing with straight picks with straight barbs. It's really easy to kind of get down and get some of those more hard to reach O-rings. Internal O-rings are like the worst thing ever, so anything to make them easier is good. Obviously, we're going to need a set of Allen keys because anytime you work on a paintball marker, you have to have Allen keys. We're going to use some Dow 55. You could probably get away with using something else. I've actually never rebuilt a Marq using anything besides the Dow 55, but I would assume Dow 33 would work. But Dow 55 is what's recommended, and that's what I use. Tri-flow, this is mainly for the bolt. It's a lot better than putting a bunch of grease on your bolt and then getting it up in the eyes and causing problems. These bolts move super fast, so it's really easy to like blow lube off. And Tri-flow is just what Bob Long recommends for their marker, and so again, that's what we're going to use. So this is one of the tools that you're really going to need, but you probably won't use them as much as you actually think. So if you don't have a shredder valve tool, definitely if you're going to be using Bob Long markers, you're going to want one of these. We do need to be mindful of the size of the tool. So this is like this massive stainless steel shredder valve tool that doesn't fit where it needs to go. So I kind of bought this and can't even use it. But in the same bag came this one, which actually fits. It's a little bit more awkward, but it does work. You want one that's going to be pretty sturdy, but you don't want one that's like huge because you won't be able to get it where it needs to go. And I'll show you as we get into this where these need to go. One thing I do need to make clear, obviously my Marq isn't stock, so we won't be covering how to service a 360 regulator. It's very simple. It's no different than any other 360 regulator that came after it. So we're not really, the knowledge is out there. It's very easy to find. So, but yes, we need to make sure that a shredder valve tool is available, but it's not like huge because it needs to go in kind of tight spaces. This is one of those that I'm going to kind of go off on a little thing here. If you're going to shoot any kind of Marq, of a Gen 1, a Victory, a VCOM, a Viz, a Reptile, T-Rex, whatever version of the Marq platform that uses this wonky style inline spool or inline poppet, I really advise getting a pressure tester. This just makes life so much easier. It's a lot easier to tune the gun. Marqs shoot great, but if they're slightly out of whack, they start to not shoot so great. So it's really kind of important to keep an eye on your pressures and make sure that everything's running properly. You can buy these on Blast Legacy. You don't absolutely 100% need this. There are ways to get around setting the HPR and the LPR, and we'll talk about those when we get to them. but having the pressure tester just makes life so much easier. Unfortunately, my Marq body is one of the more complicated ones. Again, we'll talk about that later, but it would be a lot worse if I didn't have this. So, yes, I would highly, highly, highly recommend, if you're going to own a ball bearing Marq, a Victory, whatever, get a pressure tester. This will make your life just so much easier. Okay, and I believe that's going to be all the tools we're going to need. If we need anything else, we'll just pull it out and talk about it later. So let's go ahead and actually start with the stock engine. Again, this is the one that came with the body, because I bought the body kit with the engine, but it didn't have the back block, and it was actually missing the bolt. I had an extra bolt from one of my old Marqs, so I ended up just putting that on there, but this has been sitting for a while, and we're going to need to service it. So in order to pop the bolt out, it's a quick disconnect bolt, so just pull it out, lift up, and these will separate. Then you can push your ram shaft out the back, and we can go ahead and open it up. You don't need to remove the ram shaft to open this up, but you do need to remove the bolt. So open that up. So inside, there's a spring, and there's basically nothing else in there. That is a separate piece, but that is red Loctited in there from the factory. That should never come out. If that comes out, it needs to go back in properly, or it could cause some issues. We have our poppet, and then we have our empty ram housing. So the way the Marq works, or the way it's set up, is like that. So it's very streamlined, straightforward design. It's a bit complex, but when it works really, really well. And every Marq that I've had has worked really well. So actually that should go like that. But let's go ahead and start cleaning up the old gross stuff off this engine. So one thing we want to be mindful of is knowing what all the O-rings are in this thing. There are some that are kind of hidden inside of the engine, and there's the big one right. Where's that O-ring pick at? Right here. That little guy in there. Okay. And if you don't have like a magnetic tray of some form, I'd really recommend grabbing one or having one, especially if you're going to do tech work. It just makes life a lot easier, so you're not losing screws and junk. Tech mats are also a good thing to have as well. So that's good. Clean that up. And you can check your soft tip, make sure all that's good. Getting these soft tips out is a pain in the ass. So if you have one that's damaged, especially if you snap that brass thread off, usually it's just a better idea to find another bolt, because they're a pain to change. I don't like changing them, so I usually try my best to make sure that they're in good condition for as long as I have the gun. But obviously accidents happen, and if that does get damaged, you can buy replacements. But just pray to God that you have one that comes out easily. So I will say the Marq does have a lot of tiny O-rings. I shouldn't say a lot. There's, I think, 5 in total. There are, I believe there are 1x3s up in the LPR, and then there's 1x4s back in the solenoid manifold area. So if you don't have those O-rings, I would just recommend buying an O-ring rebuild kit. You can buy them on eBay. O-Rings Online makes them. I think Captain O-Ring makes them too. But yeah, I would highly recommend just going forward, before you even kind of start doing this, plan on buying an O-ring kit if you don't have any of those tiny metric O-rings. Alright, so we'll start with the bolt. These are 015 O-rings. Some of these I do remember, some of them I don't, so we're going to have to probably use the O-ring sizer pretty frequently, but I do know typically Victory bolts, Supercharger bolts, Marq bolts are 015, so it's a pretty standard size for bolts. That guy on there like that. The guy on there like that. Oh, that's good. This one I believe is an 013. No, 012. And you might notice this can spin. That's fine. It's not going to unscrew or anything. It's kind of free floating. I don't know if these are pressed in or if they're screwed in. I don't have that information, but it is okay for that to swivel. There's no way to like tighten this down or anything like that. It's just going to do that. So don't freak out if it starts doing that. That's good. I believe this one is a 10. Okay, well, that one went flying. So, like I said, I believe that's an 010, so we're just going to put an 010 on it. If it doesn't seal, then we'll know for sure that it was not the right size. Yeah, looks right. And this one is an 8, a 008. And this one can be kind of a pain in the ass. The easiest option is to just grab the ram shaft and just poke it through. If you could hook it with an O-ring pick, go for it, but the easiest way is always the best way. We're going to want to clean all that extra lube out of there. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. So this one can be kind of a pain in the ass to get in. That one actually just slipped in perfectly fine on its own, which like almost never happens. So. Okay, now we're going to do the ram shaft. I believe this is an 11. Right? Yep. Okay. Now these, I believe, are all 22s. And hopefully I have enough of those. Let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20, 21, 20, 22. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, those would be 22s. So there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there is an 018 right here. Sorry, right here. That's an 018. So we'll go ahead and pull these off. Put that guy on. Okay. Pull all these off. You don't need to be like hospital clean with this, but you don't want all that old nasty grease filling up the O-ring groove and caking around and stuff. It's not something you want for your gun. Okay, that's good. Pull these two off. Alright, and that's all we got to do. And we can go ahead and start reassembling. What we're going to do is we are going to basically start from the back and move forward. So we are going to start with the ram shaft. Again, this is just Dow 55. There's nothing too crazy about it. So with the ram shaft, give it a decent coating. We don't want to like cake this thing in lube, but we do want there to be a healthy amount. And then what I do, take a little bit on a Q-tip, and we're going to kind of pre-coat the inside of the ram housing. Kind of up here too. We want to keep this as clean as we can, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. Then we're going to go ahead and insert the ram shaft. Make sure it kind of glides. It might feel a little rough in the back, but that's okay. So then we got that going. We're good. So here, we're really going to have to try like hell not to get any lube on this front poppet face. If that gets lube on it, it's going to leak. No clue why, but that is kind of like one of the Marq's weird quirks. It really does not like getting lube on the poppet face. So just kind of give it a check. Everything looks pretty good. There's nothing on it. There's no lube. It's not scratched. We really basically treat it like you would a spider or like an Ego poppet. If there's scratches, cuts, anything like that, it's going to need to be replaced. And we want to try to keep it as clean and as dry as possible. And we're going to take some lube. Go ahead and lube up the inside of the poppet ram shaft. Kind of wipe down any excess. So again, as little grease on this side of the poppet face is good, but we do want there to be enough that that O-ring's going to seal. And then we're going to need to get some on the poppet itself. Sorry, I keep pulling this out of frame because it's easier for me to see it that way. Again, we don't need to like cake it full of grease. We just want to make sure that it's covered. And then what we're going to do is take a towel, just kind of carefully wipe down any lube that might have accidentally gotten on the poppet face. I'm going to give that just a tiny bit more. Okay. And now take the ram shaft and go like that and seat it down. Again, we want to keep the inside of that cut on the ram housing clean. We want to keep the poppet face clean. And then all we got to do to reassemble is put the spring on, take our front cam. Oh, we actually forgot an O-ring. That guy right there. Make sure that's got some grease on it. Now we take the front ram and the front can and we thread it all back together. Push that guy forward and we reattach our bolt. And that is the full service of the stock Marq engine. All we got to do now is re-lube these O-rings here and that O-ring. We're going to wait to do that until we actually go to put it back in the gun body. So now we can actually start working on the gun itself. Easiest thing for me to do right now is to just remove the regulator. Gets it out of the way and makes it not as much of a pain in the ass to deal with. You can do the same thing with the ASA. I am actually going to, because again, it could be kind of a pain in the ass. Okay. So, we actually need to extract the back cap from the supercharged engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this screw out of the bag. And then there is a hole at the bottom of the back cap. You could theoretically put an O-ring pick in there and pull it out. I don't really care for doing that because it can damage the back cap. So I just take a swab and just carefully try to push it out the back. It could be a little tight, but as long as you're not like shoving a metal bar down there. Again, do be careful, especially if you have a soft tip bolt. You don't want to like shove something down there and break this off, because if that happens, you are screwed. So this is the supercharged engine. I'm not really going to go into doing a full tear down of this because there's a lot of parts involved. And there's a bunch of tiny O-rings that I actually don't know the sizes of. If anybody wants a rebuild video on this, let me know and I will get into this. But for today's video, it's going to be long enough, so we're not going to really get into it. But what we need to do in order to use our stock engine is we need to remove the 3 set screws that are holding this back cap in place. And all we got to do is just pull the back cap off. The thing is held in with these 3 posts. Something I will say is with these, you really want to make sure that these are down tight. I had these Loctited in, but I guess the Loctite didn't set, so I'll have to go back and do that later. But it's the same thing with the set screws that actually hold the back cap in place. You want to make sure that those are like on the back cap. You want to make sure that these are on tight, but you also don't want to like He-man them down, because then you're going to strip them out and then you're going to have another problem. So we're just going to need this bit. We're going to set the supercharged engine off to the side, and we're going to attach our back cap. So there is a way to do it. If we spin the thing around, you're going to see that there's 2 holes that are in alignment, and you obviously have your 3 screws there. The way this needs to go is those holes need to face down. So we're going to set it up like that. Make sure that you've also got lube on that O-ring as well. This one still looks pretty good. So if you do have that one break, I believe that one's also a 12. So pop that guy in, and we will put the screws back in, and that will make this stock engine ready to go. So now we've got our back cap lined up properly. We've got everything rebuilt. That is ready for relube and reinstallation into the body. So basically from here, there's nothing else that we can actually access without yanking the frame off. When we go to do this, it's really important to be very careful of where wires are, and for certain boards where your battery is, because these boards are getting kind of old. They are starting to show their age a bit, and the less you can yank one of these apart, again, obviously, is the better. So we're going to pull the grip off and open up the board, or open up the frame. And in my board's instance, I have a battery wire, so just carefully disconnect that. A stock Marq would usually have one of the Bob Long boards or one of the Tadao Ryujin boards that have just the posts and the battery sits in, and it's all one piece without an extra wire. If that's the case, just pop your battery out and you're good to go. So we're going to remove this wire here. This is your main wiring harness. Don't really want to like yank these by the wires. If you can get your hands around it and pull the tabs up, that's the best way to do it. So let's go ahead and pull the frame off. So what we're going to do is very carefully snake these wires through and pull those out. Then we can get into the main plumbing of the Marq. So the wiring harness does a lot like what other Bob Long wiring harnesses does. It basically links all the electronic components into one wiring cable, and that can be kind of a pain in the ass. So just be really careful again when you're pulling this thing apart. So I'm going to disconnect the solenoid because there are O-rings under here that we're going to need to look at. And we also have our LPR, which again, there's O-rings in and around it that we're going to need to be checking. So we're going to need a pretty small screwdriver. I think that one might work. There's a little wobble in it, but it should be okay. So I'm going to pull the solenoid manifold screws off, and that will let the solenoid come free. And then I'm going to pull the LPR screws out. There we go. We can just carefully pull the whole thing out. So we're going to set that to the side, and I need to get the screwdriver put off my lap. Okay, so these are basically the last 2 major components of the gun besides the board. And there's a few tiny O-rings involved with it. So underneath the solenoid manifold, there is this tiny metric O-ring. Again, I believe it's a 1x4. And then corresponding in the body, there are 2 more right there. Where's my pointer? Right there. It's right there and right there. And then underneath the the LPR body, there is your sealing O-ring. And again, I believe that's a 1x3. I may actually have these flipped. This may be a 1x4. This may be a 1x3. Judging by the size. So we just want to make sure that these 2 O-rings are in their places where they need to be. Assuming they are, that's all we really need to do. So I'm going to pull the LP hose, set the manifold to the side, set the solenoid to the side, and we're going to start looking at the other major component of the Marq, which is the LPR. So the way this works is it uses this adjuster in the front to push on a spring that adjusts a piston that pushes on a Schrader valve. The big obstacle in your Marq is going to be getting your low pressure piston out. Sometimes you can just tap it on a table and it will carefully move itself out. Other times, if it's been sitting for a while, that sumbitch is not going to move. It's really, really hard to get pliers in there too. So if you can get needle nose pliers in there, just very, very carefully reach in, grab it, and pull it out. I'm in a lucky position where I can just kind of tap it and I can get pliers on it, so I'm not having to reach in and like do any crazy maneuvering. But the piston can be a bit of a pain to deal with because that lip is also very small. So that is your low pressure piston. And then inside, it might be kind of hard to see, is your Schrader valve. And again, if you don't have a Schrader valve tool, this is going to be pretty much your stopping point because you're not going to be able to get that out to check it. Again, 99% of the ones that I've seen have never had a problem, but if it's been sitting for a long time, it never hurts to pull it out and check it. If it's still good, keep using it. If it's not, you can buy replacements. So I'm just going to go ahead and check that now while we're here, and I don't remember what side of this I use. It's going to go like that, and I need a socket wrench. Carefully loosen that up and twist it out. I need to buy a new damn Schrader valve tool. Okay, drop it out. And basically what we're going to want to look for is we want to make sure that the actual shaft itself is not bent. That is the only thing I've ever actually seen that has damaged one of these, is a bent shaft. We want to make sure that the seal is still good. The seal looks fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. And then we're going to carefully push that open, and we're going to check that and make sure that that all looks good, which I don't see anything wrong with that either. So pretty much this thing passes the checks. I see nothing wrong with it. We're going to just put it back in and never touch it again, basically. When you go to put this in, does it go better that way? No, absolutely not. When you go to put this in, you don't need to lube it. I don't lube Schrader valves. It's just not something that I do. I've never really seen a reason to. So we're going to just carefully drop it back in. And we're just going to start threading her down. And you don't want to, again, crank this thing to the nines. Just go till it's snug. And then I give it just the easiest little bit. Like the tiniest little amount. Because we need to be able to get this thing out later in case it stops working. And if you crank it down, Loctite it, do whatever crazy people do, all you're going to do is destroy that, then you're never going to be able to get it out, and then you are screwed and you're going to have to buy another LPR body. So just use common sense and don't like hog that thing down, or you're going to F yourself later. So the only thing that we really need to do inside now is replace this O-ring, which I believe is an 013, no, 012. Okay, get that on there. And we're going to use a little bit more of this 55. And again, we don't want to like cake this thing in lube. We just want to fill that O-ring groove. And that's just about all we want to do. And it goes in the exact way it came out. So nose first, push it down, spring, push that in. And then the adjuster cap, you want to make sure that obviously this side is out because that's how you adjust it. So the easiest way to start it, you may have just seen me do it, set it on there, back it up. Don't just try to thread it down. This is brass going into aluminum, so it can cross thread. Set it on there, go backwards to hear it click, and then just start twisting. The best way to set this up right now is we're just going to go until I don't hear that spring rattle. And this will basically be the best way to set this up. So set that to the side, and we're going to again check this solenoid manifold O-ring. That all looks pretty good. I don't see anything wrong with it. So now that we've basically checked all the O-rings, the solenoid body O-rings look pretty good. I don't see anything wrong with those. As long as they are where they're supposed to be, that's all we really care about. We can actually go ahead and start reassembling this. And this is where things start to get a little tricky. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts involved. So I apologize if it gets out of whack from here, but this is the chaos that is adjusting a Marq. So we're going to put a little bit of lube on these body O-rings. Firstly, clean the solenoid body off. Make sure all that looks good, which it do. Going to clean the extra lube off of the solenoid manifold. Again, make sure that O-ring stays where it's supposed to. Okay. It's gonna go like that. It's gonna go like that. And then we're going to set our screws in. And carefully try to line this up. And then I'm just going to start this first screw here. Oh, okay, maybe not. Start that one. That way we kind of know where everything positions. Set that one up like that. Again, just kind of get it started so that can't wobble around too much. And then I'm going to move this back. Check the LPR body O-ring. Clean and relube that. There we go. That's all I'm going to do. Set that on like that. And then this is kind of where the annoyance begins, because we're going to have to do this without crushing wires and putting wires into the middle of screw holes. So I believe we've cleared them. So what I'm going to do is again start these screws, and what I want to do is make absolutely certain that none of these are sitting underneath the LPR body, because if there's a gap it's going to leak, and if it leaks that's not good. This is probably the worst part about the Marq, is how they crammed everything into this tiny little gun body, and it could be kind of a pain in the ass to do service on them if you have like a major leak out of like the solenoid / LPR area. If that is the case, just be real careful. Check where everything is. Don't force anything, and don't rush through anything. So if you do, that's how like screws get stripped, wires get torn, Schrader valves get broken, things like that. So just be real careful when you do stuff, and be prepared to kind of deal with a lot of weirdness when you take care of your Marq. And that's kind of how it is for a lot of the later version ball blown guns, especially like the Victory. If they're all like how my HK Ripper was, that is probably the most complicated, weird design ever. But yeah, that is how we replumb all of that. So we're going to go ahead, finish tightening down the solenoid manifold. And you want to do this as evenly as possible. You don't want to like crank down one side. Tighten them both up until they stop, and then give them their final little bit. So let's go ahead and reconnect our solenoid. And this is where things start to get kind of creepy. So at this point, this is kind of where paths may differ. So if you have an earlier production Marq, you might notice that your trigger frame is completely solid all the way through. If you have a later version Marq, you might notice that there's a cut made in the frame right where the LPR adjuster is. Very convenient. Not really sure why they didn't decide to do this from the beginning. I'm sure it was kind of the gift of hindsight, being an asshole. But the earlier versions of the Marqs didn't have the LPR notch. So this is the point where if you don't have a pressure tester, things are going to get very, very, very complicated. If you have a later Marq that has the cut, you're golden. All you have to do is just put everything back together, set your HPR pressure and your LPR pressure, either using your pressure tester or how we're going to do it here in a minute. But if you're like me, who has a Marq with the solid frame, this is kind of where some extra steps are involved. So the way that I set my Marq up is I will actually set the thing up, regulator, pressure tester, ASA with a tank on it, straight into the regulator, and that's how we're going to test it. So that is how we're going to do it. I know this isn't like the best option, and a lot of people don't like doing it this way, and I don't blame you. It can be dangerous, it can cause problems, you can break something. This will also, however, let me see if somewhere in here we're getting a leak. So if we were to put this whole thing back together and we're getting a leak from the grip frame, well, we have to rip the whole fucking thing back apart. At this point, we can air this up and we can tell, well, we're getting a leak from the solenoid manifold, or we're getting a leak from the LPR body, or we're getting a leak out of the front of the LPR, or the solenoid is purging, or something like that. So this does have its benefits, but it can be not really the best option. So if you're going to do this, please just be insanely careful when you do it. So we're going to go ahead, set this up, and if you don't have a pressure tester, the way that I would set this up is as follows. What we're going to do is we're going to take our regulator and we're actually going to kill pressure to it completely. We want to zero this thing out. This will basically give us our starting point from zero. What we're going to do is we're going to take a pressure tester that you can build using just an old ASA and a gauge. You don't have to have a purge button. It does make life a lot easier for testing the recharge rate of regulators. I believe I bought this 1/8 inch NPT, 2 female, 1 male adapter things off of Amazon. The purge button thing you can also buy on Amazon. The gauges, I've just collected them over the years. But basically, I've just taken this ASA and stuck a gauge on it, and that will let me set up my pressure. I would recommend having something that goes up to at least 800 psi on your gauge. This one just goes up to 12. It's just one that I had. There we go. And basically, from zero, we are going to set this at 200 psi. You could probably set it a little bit lower. 200 is just where these operate at. So I'm going to back this out until we hit, oh god, ideally without dropping the Allen key. We're going to back this out until we hit, come on, 200, and then just give it a blast and make sure that that is sitting at 200 psi, which it is. So we're good there. And that is kind of the quick, dirty way to set up your HPR. I do this basically to set up any HPR that I have that goes on any gun. It helps me test recharge rate. It helps me make sure that I'm not going to be sticking a regulator onto a gun and then blowing the solenoid up. So if you just have an extra old ASA laying around and like a 800 or 1500 PSI gauge or whatever, easy, cheap reg tester just makes life way easier. So that's all you got to do. So now that we have our HPR set, we can go ahead and prep this all to go back together. And this is kind of where, again, there's some extra steps involved if you don't have a pressure tester. If you don't have a pressure tester and you don't have the LPR notch, you are a special kind of in trouble, because there's going to be a lot of pulling the frame off and adjusting in your future with this. It's not fun. It's not something that I really enjoyed doing the first time I had to do it. I have had to experience the hell that causes. So we're basically going to set this up, and we're going to grab our pressure tester, take a pressure tester. We are going to want to lube this thing. Obviously, it's got O-rings. It's going to have to seal. So we're going to set this in. That. Apply air. This would be a lot easier if I had a damn remote line, but I don't. Hold the thing back because this ASA is stupid. Excellent. So now, first thing we're going to do is check for leaks, which I ain't hearing shit. So that's good. We're going to look at our high pressure gauge, which is sitting actually at 180 psi, so those Ashcroft gauges are off a little bit. But that's fine, 180 psi works just fine. And the thing we're going to really want to make sure is that our LPR pressure is currently at 0. So, depending on what style engine you are using in your Marq, you may be using between 65 psi and like I think 80 psi. So the Supercharger engine, I have mine set at 75 psi, which I'm guaranteeing you is way too high, but this gun prefers to run it a little bit higher. So I'm actually going to set this at 75 psi, keep the HPR where it's at, and then we're going to do some chrono shots, make sure all that looks good. If it's still too low, we'll use the LPR to try to tighten up velocity just a tiny bit. So the way we're going to do this, and again, it's really sketchy, is we need to turn this screw inward. And it is a pain in the ass, and adjustments are really slow. If I remember correctly, these LPRs aren't that responsive. So it's going to take a couple turns. God, it hasn't even moved yet. Man, there's got to be a better tool for this. Allen key. Oh, there we go. It's 50. Come on. 60. 70. I believe that's 75 right there. Okay. So, we've got our LPR set. We have our HPR set. We are good to put the frame back on. Make sure that everything works. Something that we can actually do really quick to try to make our life a little bit easier, since we're going to have to attach everything anyways, is let's go ahead and plug the thing in. Firstly, just to make sure everything still works. And also so we can try to purge the HPR. So the board still works. Eyes are still working. There we go. Okay. So now we can go ahead and shut this off. Pop this out. And let's go ahead and pull that guy out. Pull this off because we've already got that set where it needs to be. And we'll go ahead and snake everything back in because we're going to have to fight the two screws in order to get the frame back on. So I'm going to pre-start the front one. Just give it a turn. Take this, set it back like that. Snake wires through. I'm sure there's somebody who's like done this 8 jillion times. They're like, dude, this guy's a moron. Hell yeah. So now we've got the wiring harness through. We're going to carefully try to slide that sucker in. And make sure we've got it all the way forward. And I just want to try to get that freaking rear screw started. And then before we start going crazy, we're going to check and make sure that there's no wires sticking out of anywhere in that gap. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a gap right there. It's the same on the other side. That's where the frame cuts are. So if any wires are sticking out of there, clear them first, then start tightening stuff down. And again, go in equal amounts, or else you're going to bind up one side of the frame. Now we're going to give them both a bit of a snug. Plug our main harness back in. We want to try to keep these wires away from the front of the micro switch. You also want to make sure that your spring is in place. If it's hitting the micro switch, it could actually cause the gun to run away. So we want to make sure that spring is in its little housing, which it is, so that's good. Put that back in. And we're just going to, again, turn it on, make sure everything works. Eyes are all working. That works. Solenoid still works. We're all good there. Let's go ahead and shut the thing off. Get everything carefully tucked back in. And we're going to put the grip back on. And that is the entirety of servicing the internals of the Marq. It gets a little insane, especially under the hood, but I usually only have to do this maybe once a year, if that. I usually try not to yank my Marqs apart that often. Ideally, the fewer times you got to do it, the better. But yeah, It's not difficult once you do it a couple times, but there are just the few things you have to watch out for when you do service. The big one especially is just making sure that you don't accidentally like crush your wires when you're trying to like put the LPR body back in, because those wires will try to get under the screw hole. You'll drive a freaking screw into it and then you'll break it, and it's a whole thing. So it's basically just chaos management that you have to worry about. Go ahead and put our regulator back on. There's our ASA. See, it was sitting about like there. Tighten those guys down. Okay. We'll replace our macro line. Okay. So we know that all of this is good. Now is the real test of whether the stock engine is good. Very rarely do I ever actually get a Gen 1 stock engine to go in without leaking on the first try. It has happened, but it is a rarity for me. It's just one of those things, they just like to do it. I don't really know why, but if you take good care of it, make sure your seals are all good, lube it properly, you shouldn't really have an issue. I think I'm just cursed. For whatever reason, every Gen 1 Marq I've had, every time I do a rebuild or service on them, they want to give me some crap in the beginning. So I went ahead and lubed up the can O-rings. I'm going to put just the tiniest little dot of Triflow on the bolt. Oof. All right. Let's go ahead and when you go to put this in, don't like shove it in there. Make sure it goes in kind of on its own volition. These rear O-rings especially will like to kind of grab, and you just want to make sure that you don't force those in. You're going to break them and you're going to have a leak at your back cap. Tighten that up. Okay. So now we need to see if it leaks. Which, if it does, it's going to suck, but I'm honestly kind of expecting it. We're going to need one of these. Sometimes doing a clearing shot will actually help seal some of the O-rings in the engine. If we do get a leak, we're going to do a couple quick test fires and make sure that they don't work themselves out. But sometimes they do. Oh, no way. Okay, it's completely leak free. Probably be really hard to hear because we got a fan going in the kitchen, but no leaks coming from anywhere. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Shut the eyes off. Ooh, yeah. Excellent. Check again. Not hearing any leaks. So we're gonna take this outside. We're gonna do some quick chrono shots, make sure everything works, and hopefully we have a perfectly shooting Marq. So let's go ahead and take it outside. If we need to make any adjustments, we'll bring it back in, we'll make some adjustments and go from there. Okay, so I apologize for the sunlight, but we're doing this pretty early in the morning. So we've already aired it up, we've already made sure that it works. So all we're gonna really wanna do now is make sure that our velocity is good. So I've got a halo full of HK paint, boring out about 677. So consistency is good. Velocity needs to come up though, so we'll open up the regulator. The regulator lined up in the dumbest place possible. Okay. 299, 277, 293, 277, 281, 273, 276, 276, 284. 293, and 301. It's going to be a little kind of all over the place. We did just service everything, so the lube needs to move around, O-rings need to seat, but velocity looks pretty good. It seems like it's going to run pretty fine with 75 PSI on the LPR. We may bump that up to 80 just to help try to tighten up the velocity a little bit, but currently have no complaints with that. So that's the whole video. I apologize that it was so long, but it was a ton of fun to make this video. I don't really get in the habit of making long content anymore, but hopefully somebody finds this video interesting. I'm sure I've messed something up, and I'm sure somebody in the comments will correct me, but that's the whole video. I appreciate everybody for watching. Look forward to whatever comes next, and have a good day.